Hi guys, and welcome to a series of videos I will be making now over the next few weeks before we reach the end of the year, which are going to be focusing on this year's IEMs and the IEMs that stood out. There are going to be plenty of IEMs that are going to be missing out of these videos. Some because I just wasn't able to get them, some because they were not sent, some because I just couldn't afford them. There are going to be obviously opinions which are going to differ from mine, but these are selections of IEMs, and they're always going to be usually in batches of 10. These are the IEMs that for me this year stood out, that for me they did enough for me to say no, these are really fantastic IEMs, and they stand out, and they really tick the right boxes for me. Of course, I have not included previous models or previous, let's say, selections of other years, because I wanted to maintain things to just this year, and also, avoid in that way making the videos too long or too complex. Anyway, what do I have here in no particular order? So this is no order of who's first, who's last, although I will at the end of the video, or towards the end of the video, say which are my favorite three. And I want to make something perfectly clear, not only to the brands which are represented here, but to also everybody. Just because I will be selecting those top three, that doesn't mean that obviously everybody has to agree. It doesn't mean that they are IEMs which were doing something way above the rest of them in such a significant manner that made them be the top three. They were just the IEMs that I ultimately opted whenever I was choosing one IEM. I kind of went for those IEMs first. Those were the IEMs that surprised me for one reason or another. I wasn't expecting them to be as good as they were. And that's why they kind of ended up being that selection of mine that kind of is just stood out ever so slightly, because the truth is any one of these IEMs here, with maybe two exceptions which are on the lower end of that scale of these top 10s, any one of these IEMs is really, really solid. They've done, or the brands that made these IEMs, I believe, have ticked the right boxes with regards to what was intended. So their tuning idea, their design, their build, everything was, I think, ticked, and that's why they ultimately are here in front of me. Some of them are from brands which are popular, other ones are from more boutique orientated brands, and some of them even belong to very high-end brands. Anyway, let's go through this. I've got here the Twistuda Wood Note. Next to that, I've got the Heide's MK12 Tourist. Next to that, the One Dot Audio D100 Helios. Next to that, the Plunge Audio Unity Dynamic. Next to that, the Dita Prelude. On this front row here, the NF Acous NM25, the BQ EYZ Winter 2, the Intuara Balance, the Hebe Project Ace, and the last but not least, the Let's Shure DX1. You will notice straight away that there's a lot of different styles of tuning here. We've got the very neutralish style of maybe these two here, the Let's Shure and the Hebe, being contrasted by a more, let's say, bass, I wouldn't say bass prominent, but more thicker, more organic type of sound that we found here, for example, in the Twistuda, we find in the MK, and we find in the Wood Note, by ones which have a very high level of detail, which are the case of the Plunge, the NF Acous, and the BQIZ, and also then finally the Unity Dynamic and the Intuara Balance, which, although they've got two different styles of tuning, they are I wouldn't say the most audiophile of the bunch. That isn't a correct assessment on my side, but they are IEMs that they do things that stand out a little bit different from the rest. Of course, the Intuara Balance is probably the one that has the most, let's say, run-of-the-mill tuning, okay, more the Harman style approach to things, and maybe because of that it will probably be just trying to find the graph for it. 1 second. I believe it's number 21. Let me see exactly. And I believe because of that it will probably be one of the IEMs that has the most choices going for it. So this will probably be one of the safest choices overall, or the one that most people will agree upon being here. Another one that I think a lot of people also agree with being here, because it's such a complete IEM in what it's doing, and it's an accessible one, especially when you consider the brand that it represents, the Dieter Prelude. While the others then, they follow their respective brands, let's say usual house sound, and others even are surprises. I mean, Twistura, the Woodnote is a relatively recent brand. They're just over a year old, and for them to already have been able to do something of this quality, or at least for them to have been able to do something which I believe is solid enough to be included in this group, I think it's to be applauded and to be given its deserved merit. I'm not going to run through each one of them in a lot of detail, but I will say that yes, there's no denying that there's a certain, let's say, at least for me, that there was a certain magic that I found here in the Woodnote and in the MK12. Both have exchangeable nozzles, but with the respective nozzles that I chosen for them, there was no denying that the tonality, the warmth, the organic aspect that either one of these two IEMs brought to my ears was something that really impressed me. The MK12 with its 12mm driver is without question an incredible IEM. I mean, incredible IEM. For the longest time, for example, you guys know, and it's an IEM that has gotten deserved merit, the MIM Dark Magician, and it's one of my favorite IEMs. I own a set, and it's one of my favorite IEMs in terms of single dynamics. And I have to say that when I first listened to the MK12 with the first nozzle, I wasn't that it had, I wasn't displeased, but I wasn't impressed as well. But the moment then I put the red nozzle, and I got the more I don't know how to call it, even the more let's say harmonish, warm type of harmonish tuning that that particular nozzle conveys, the MK12. I was reminded to a certain extent of the MIM Dark Magician, and then as time went by and the more I listened to it, I came to understand why I actually think it's a solid but very, very solid alternative to the Dark Magician. The Dark Magician is an IEM that impresses, first of all, by having way more bass than what you think you would have by looking at the graph on its own, and also by having an amount of detail and clarity up top that really, really impresses. And even with regards to my particular MIM Dark Magician, which it has got a little bit more bass energy than I've seen on some other units, that balance, that amount of detail that it still is able to keep there and be present there without, it's one of those IEMs that it's just almost kind of feels like it's a flaw. You don't expect it to be as balanced, as well mannered as it is by looking in terms, or by looking just at plain and simple at the graph. It's got way more bass slam than what you would expect. and it's always complemented by a lot of extension up top, a lot of extension. And the MK12 gave me exactly the same sort of vibe. By looking at the graph, you would think, oh, okay, it's got a lot of bass and it's not going to be keeping up with the high end with it. And then when you listen to it, you are absolutely blown away. And although, when I take the MK12 graph and I put it next to the MIM Dark Magician graph, there's obviously noticeable differences. The overall vibe, the overall type of sound that comes across is very similar. And I'll go as far as saying that the MK12 does a better job even. The driver of the MK12, lithium magnesium drive, if I'm not mistaken, is a really, really good driver. And the sound that it puts out is obviously a testament not only to its quality, but also to the way that it was tuned. It does offer, as I said, those other nozzles which allow it to be a little bit more let's say, varied in the type of sound that it can give in the crowd that it can pull into to the MK12's performance. But I think honestly that the red nozzle is the one that strikes the best balance. I found the other nozzles just gave a little bit, for my ears at least, a little bit way too much energy in that upper mid area, and it somehow lost that coherence. Maybe not so noticeable at lower volumes, but once you started increasing the volume, the way that it scaled wasn't as good as it is when it scales with the red nozzle. It's just something that you actually have to experiment yourself. To perhaps also feel or get that perception, or then you might not even get that perception, and you might even like the other nozzles better. The reality is this: ultimately, as I've said countless times, it's all about how the IEM sounds in your ears, and that's what is matters. That's exactly what matters. But anyway, to continue here, the reality is the MK12 is really a solid sounding IEM, well built. If there's any nitpick that I can put into the MK12s, is maybe the cable could have been a little bit better, but it is an IEM, costs between the $150 to $170, depends. And it it's solidly built, good quality driver. You cannot fault it. The wood note is roughly about the same price, give or take, a little bit, maybe a little bit more expensive. But again, the nozzles convey it the sound that, or convey it a sound which, for me at least in my ears, make it again really a real pleasure to listen to. I don't want to sound like a broken record when I'm saying this, but I've listened and I've been planning this review already or this video for quite a while, and I've listened to these IEMs countless times. Obviously the BQYZ and the NF are more recent additions to this group here, but I can't fault those two. Going onto the ODA and the Unity, very much what I said about those previous two I apply to these two, but more even with regards to two aspects, which is, on the other hand, the ODA, the Helios, has this warmth to the sound that just makes it sound, it just makes it very fatigue free, very easy to listen to, and has this sense of presence when it comes to the way the bass has been done, which is just impressive. I mean, honestly, really impressive. I know it's an IEM which is not exactly easy to come across, and that obviously will make things a little bit difficult to confirm by others. But what I can say is that the combination of a wood, stable wood shell, the combination of a good driver that they use inside, and a very smart way of tuning, has given or has brought a sound which is really solid. As I mentioned, from the bass and its presence, and by looking at the graph, you'd think, oh my god, this is going to be a bass monster. all the way through to how then the mids and the upper mids and the treble are able to keep up with that amount of bass. It just has this very old school valve like audiophile kind of vibe to it, if that's maybe the best analogy that I can make. And the plunge, the Unity Dynamic, takes that same sort of vibe and just provides a little bit extra more detail up top. There's no clear winner between the two. They both do it very well. A little bit extra detail on the plunge, a little bit extra bass presence on the ODA. The truth is they are both incredible sounding IMs, Dita Prelude, detail like you find very few other single DDs capable of. I mean, the detail you get here on the Dita Prelude, the detail that you are able to get here on the NM25 and on the BQEYZ Winter Winter 2, is nothing short of incredible, especially when you consider that they are in essence single dynamics. Perhaps maybe on the Winter it won't be totally fair, but in the things that count, or the main part that counts here, is that they are in essence single dynamics, and the detail that any one of these three has is unreal. It's incredible. And even though my preferred tuning style, my preferred tuning sound is one like the ODA or the MK12 or the Unity Dynamic, I cannot but praise the BQEYZ, the NM25 and the Dita Prelude, because they do it well. They're not fatiguing. At no point was I ever wanting to like turn down the volume because it was too much. And even if that even remotely happened, it was more down to how loud the IEMs were able to get than them actually being harsh or aggressive or becoming unpolished or unelegant, if that is even a way or an adjective that I can use in this case. And the NM25 was the one that probably would be the one I would say was the culprit of that little minor nitpick, only because it really plays loud. I mean, this thing plays loud. As for the Hebe Project Ace and the DX1, they have this very neutral approach to things. And of the two, straight away I will say the Project Ace is the one that I prefer. Although the DX1 did do enough to get itself into this group. It did do enough to outdo other IEMs. You would ask yourself, hey, but Tony, but you're such a big Tanstrom fan and you haven't got a Tanstrom. Yeah, well, I'll be honest, the Fission did impress me, and I did like the Fission, but I didn't think that the Fission, for example, which follows a tuning which is more similar to the Balance, did enough to outdo the DX1 to be here in this group and then kind of be competing here against the Balance. Compared to the Balance is the better one, period. The Balance, the Into Outer Balance, is a better IM when we are looking at the tuning style that the Tanstrom Fission has. In another video, which I've already begun to do, there will be some Tanstrom stuff there, definitely. But in this bracket of above $100, no. There is another Tanstrom that I've just received, which is the Foller, which I will be also listening to in more detail in the coming days. And maybe, who knows, maybe if there's need for that, I can include it in this group as it's placed in terms of price in this price bracket. But going back here to the Hebe and the DX1, they have this very neutralish, very flat type of sound associated with them. The DX1, I think, look, as I said, it did enough to be here, yes, definitely. But when I take it, for example, and but when I take the DX1 and I compare it here to the Project Ace, although they have a very similar tuning style, very, very similar tuning style. And when I show you the graphs, you'll see exactly what I mean. The fact that we have a 12mm driver here inside of the Hebe then gives that bass that extra weight that's needed, that extra presence that's needed to make it just be more complete, more satisfying overall in the listening experience. But as I said, the DX1 in this tuning style that these two share did enough to be here, and the only nitpick that I can put on it honestly is that there were songs that I would have liked a little bit more bass presence. But again, and I don't like repeating certain things because I don't want to seem like I'm being redundant, and these IMs, like I said earlier, they've all been tuned in a specific manner, so to consider that a fault is not fair. What it was intended to do, it does it perfect, and it does enough to be in this group, period, end of story. That's just the reality. They both share the same tuning philosophy. Of the two, the Hebe is the one that satisfied me the most. They also have kind of similar prices. Well, actually no, the DX1 is cheaper. So if this vibe of sound is what you like or you prefer, you have two choices, let's put it that way. And then finally we have here the Into Outer Balance, and the Into Outer Balance is an IM that has, like I said in the beginning, let's say the more safe or the more common type of tuning approach that many brands use. It's using a very, very good driver inside, very, very good driver. I was actually able to confirm this from a proper source. It's also got, as you can see, some tuning mojo going here, and the reality is it sounds incredible. It sounds really good. And again, it was an IM that it kind of reminded me to a certain extent in terms of its overall character to the MIM Dark Magician. And once again, I have to admit that I think that it has done enough to even outdo the Dark Magician. So we have basically got two IEMs here that, in my opinion, are able to bring to the table a performance which surpasses that of the MIM Dark Magician. And as you guys recall, that was an IM that was initially launched at just under $400, and then the price escalated all the way to close to $600 for a single dynamic. Whether it was worth that price or not is, I'm not even going to delve into that. I've said my opinion with regards to that plenty of times. I've always believed that if the Dark Magician had been at under $250, everybody would have still made plenty money with regards to the people involved in building it, and they would have sold 10 times more IEMs. Okay, but hey, it is what it is. But the fact that these two IEMs, which are significantly cheaper than the MIM Dark Magician, are able to bring a performance which is superior to the or equal, let's put it that way, to be not to offend anybody, equal to the MIM Dark Magician, I think already talks worlds about how I feel about these two IEMs. That's a basic overview of each one of them. In terms of then which are the three that kind of I went to more often, I think it was noticeable that which those three were, and that's the MK, the ODA, and the MK12, the ODA, the Helios, and the Plunge Unity. The next ones that I went to were the Wood Note and the Balance. And then the next three that I selected, between the three of them were the BQYZ, the DT Prelude, and the NF. The last ones that I went for were the Hebe, and the last one definitely was the DX1. By no other reason than just what I was saying, that the rest of them just kind of were the ones that oftentimes were just right there, and I just picked them up. Or it was very much, the choices was very much a choice of I saw them on top of the, okay, it's that what I'm going to take today, and that was it. So it wasn't an intentional kind of, now today I'm going to listen to the Wood Note, tomorrow I'm going to listen to the DT Prelude. No. So that's it. That kind of, I think, ultimately will please everybody, especially the manufacturers. I don't want them to in any way be offended by what I'm saying. But that's, the reality is this: the ODA, the MK12, and the Plunge Audio are the ones that I more oftentimes go and listen to them, because well, the MK12 and the ODA, because they just impressed me from day one. They listen not with the original nozzle, as I mentioned, but with the red nozzle. When I started listening to the MK12 with the red nozzle, I was like, oh my god, this thing sounds just out of this world. The ODA, by that lush old school type of, it's like I said earlier, the best analogy that I can make is that I'm listening to a valve amplifier set up with these vintage speakers. That's the vibe I get from this. Very similar as well on the MK and on the Plunge, but they kind of almost are more, let's say, transistor style kind of, those old 70s and 80s receivers, those Marantz receivers, or Fisher, or the countless of Techniques that you had some good stuff from Kenwood as well. It's that kind of vibe of sound. While, the stuff like the BQYZ, the NM, or more, let's say, the more 90s, the more British type of sound, NAD, Name, that kind of vibe of sound, if you guys are familiar with home audio. But the truth is, any one of these IEMs ticks the right boxes, as I mentioned. They all do things as they were designed to do properly. And you really cannot go wrong as long as you have those aspects clear. I mean, if you want an IM that has a nice rich bass presence, then you're not going to go for the DX1. But I think I've said enough to make it clear what the DX1 is about. If you like that more rich presence of bass, then definitely these three here will be the ones to go for. If you like details, if what you're looking for is resolution and so on, Prelude, BQYZ, NF Akus, if you like that overall kind of does everything right and not anything, there's really nothing missing in terms of its performance, then the Intuaro Balance and the Plunge are the ones that will tick those right boxes. I would even actually include the Hebe here in the kind of does everything right as well platform or group, because it kind of is very much like that. Anyway, let me just quickly run by the graphs by you so you guys can have a general idea. Okay, let's talk graphs now. This is the graph for the Hydis MK12 Touris with the red nozzle. And as you can see, by looking at the graph, nothing offensive, but you would perhaps think, okay, this is going to be overly thick, overly deep, muffled, perhaps even. It's not going to be opened, it's not going to be detailed, and you couldn't be further from the truth. It sounds absolutely incredible with the red nozzle, in my opinion. It's got an authoritative bass, it's clean, it's got weight. The fact that it's got this extra amount of energy here in this area between 80 hertz more or less and 400 hertz conveys that bass, that tonality, that presence, which makes it ultimately very gratifying, very tonally correct, at least for me. Male vocal sounds, they have the right amount of voice. There's no thinness associated with anything that's going to be coming up in the mids. There's correct note weight, in my opinion, as well, with regards to everything. It just sounds really good. And then, as you guys recall, when I said that it reminded me of my Dark Magician, well, let me show you something here. Well, this is my Dark Magician, okay, and this is my Dark Magician measured with the black box that initially I was using to measure all my IEMs, and then I changed over to using the TP50 from EPZ, or then using other dongles. And this is how, with the green, okay, this is how my MIM Dark Magician now graphs. Okay, so sorry. So it went from this, which is what most of us were used to seeing for the MIM Dark Magician. And I'm not gonna oh no, the MIM Dark Magician doesn't graph like this. I mean, I've seen other graphs out there which look very similar, whether or not they are using the black box as well, or using another source to actually power the IM. I don't know. What I do know is I had my Dark Magician measured with that black box, okay, and this is how it graphs. I connected up to my EPZ, and this is how it graphs, okay, and this is how it sounds. This is more correct to what I'm listening than the other one. When I compare it to the MK12, you can see the similarities. I think it's very self-evident. When I take, for example, here the 100 hertz point on the MK12, where it corresponds and the amount of energy that's there, but then taking into account this is a 12mm driver, the balance that comes out of that is basically the same as the balance that I get in the Dark Magician. At least my Dark Magician 100 hertz point corresponds to about 2 kilohertz, 10mm driver. The energy that we have there is plenty to keep up with this. It's clean, it's detailed, and that's exactly what I get in the MK12. More so, even more bass weight above all, without losing any of the detail up top. Okay, anyway, that's the MK12. Next one is yes, let's straight away. Where's the wood note? 17. Okay, this is the wood note, and you can see why I also like the wood note, and why there's a lot of similarities again between the wood note and the MK12. They have a similar tuning style, especially with those particular nozzles being used. The wood note, using that again, that different or unusual driver material, conveys the overall tonality and everything to be very agreeable. A little bit more energy up top, I'm not going to deny it. A little bit also noticeable that it's got a little bit more energy than the MK12. But the balance, although really good, it's not as polished, it's not as well achieved as on the MK12. But wood note, again, you can, I think it's pretty evident why I like the wood note the way I do. Okay, so that's the wood note. Okay, let's see now which one. Oh, ODA, where are you? Let's take it away. Actually, you know what, let me go by order, otherwise it's going to get a little bit confusing. This is the Hebe, the Project Ace, and I'm going to show you the DX1 as well, so that you guys can understand why I say that they are very similar. That's the DX1. Okay, that's the Hebe DX1 coming up. This lack this way too modest way of tuning the DX1, although it conveys a spectacular mid-range clarity, which is it has to be said, really incredible mid-range clarity and detail and everything. It does make some songs sound a little bit overly lean at times, and that's why then when you take the Hebe with its 12mm driver, it just gives that extra energy that's needed, and the Hebe, it sounds really good. There's nothing wrong with the Hebe, to be totally truthful. So 17, this is the wood note I've shown you, so we've done that. Number 18, this is the plunge or the unity dynamic. You can see here 100 hertz point where it corresponds, nice amount of energy up top to giving it plenty detail. It's got more details than what not more details, but the details that are there are very well balanced with the rest of the frequency range that comes from behind, and conveys this kind of, does everything right. It just sounds right with everything. There's very few songs that you would say it doesn't sound right. Although, as I mentioned in the review for the Unity Dynamic, the quality of everything that it's doing is such that it's a waste to go and put this IM playing just dance music or just playing EDM. I mean, it can do it and it does it well, but it's a waste. It's just, you're not really getting the best of the plunge and what it can do in terms of sound. Next one here, that's the ODA, the D100, the Helios. Again, incredible sounding IM. The bass and how it matches to the mids, you would think that maybe it's going to be overly dark, but no, it's just got this weight that it's guys, I don't know, I sometimes struggle in trying to convey my opinions, but what I can say is that the ODA, it just sounds good. It sounds very, very, very lush. It's the way that it involves you, it's quite something. And as I mentioned, it's a combination of shell used, the way that the bass is done, and the quality of the driver, which allows you to get away with this much bass and not having a sound which is muffled or undetailed or sluggish or anything of the sort. And that's one thing that's very common here in all of these IMs. The drivers that have been used here are all really, really good, and that's why they are able to do things like the way they are doing and sound as solid as they sound. Okay, so ODA, plunge, Unity Dynamic, out of the way. Next one now here, that's the DX1, which I've already shown you. Next one now, balance, and you can understand why the name. Everything is very balanced, and although when I mentioned the plunge, let me just get here the plunge again. I'm just going to change the color. You guys can say or can ask me, but Tony, they graph so differently. How can you say that they sound so equally similar? So look, they just do. If on the balance, by looking at the graph, you can automatically say, yeah, okay, this is going to sound pretty balanced. There's nothing that's let's say standing out as a mistake or as a point of concern. Maybe on the graph of the plunge, you would think, okay, this whole seesaw thing there, it's going to be. Guys, trust me. You listen to it and you listen to the balance, and you will understand the magic that either one of these two IMs have. It's this well, the Unity Dynamic, because of the way that the whole shell design is done, it's something which I have to compliment them. I mean, Simon Fick, the man knows what he's doing. Period. End of story. And the proof of that is it sounds so audiophile correct. That's I don't want to repeat myself, but unfortunately I have to. So the plunge and the balance, as I said, really competent. This is the Dita Prelude, loads of detail up top, but not leaving anything behind in terms of the bass to be complementing what it's capable of doing up top. Although it's not here that the magic lies, it's up top that's it's doing its thing, its magic. NF Focus NM25, you can see why I compared it to the Dita Prelude. Again, tremendous amount of detail up top. Nothing to be ashamed of. And I'm just going to change quickly the color of the BQE before putting it up. And the BQE again, another one that shares that same sort of high energy presentation, maybe a little bit extra mid bass as compared to the other two, which sometimes is noticeable, but these three are really very detailed up top, but not lacking in any way in the lower department. That's the truth. As can be seen and evident by the graph, obviously the BQE is the one that sounds just the loudest. And it sounds loud. Trust me, it sounds really loud. And guys, that's basically it. There's really not much more that I can say. These are for me my top IMs for this year. They, they've done everything that I was expecting them to do correctly. They sound solid. They don't have any real flaws that can be pointed to them. Everything with their respective tuning has been done really, really well. And that's why I've selected them as my top choices for this year. And they will join obviously some of my previous IMs that I really enjoy, like the MIM Dark Magician, the Tanstrom, the Origin, the Oxygen, the FD15, the FIO, the Duno, the Falcon. There's a few other IMs from previous years that I think are solid enough to still keep themselves as my favorite single DDs. And that's that. All right, guys, as always, like and subscribe. Anything you'd like to ask me, please feel free to do so, and I'll do my best to answer as soon as possible. Take care now. Bye-bye.